I am a Susan Norwell, educational specialist and co-founder of Rett University.
I am Courtney Barnum. I am an educational specialist and training coordinator for Rett University.
And I'm Lizzie Heinmiller. I am a speech language pathologist and training coordinator for Rett University.
All right. So we are here tonight for moving from emergent to more independent reading. We actually have a bit of a sequence of what we do to move people, little people, big people, doesn't matter what age they are, because they come to us all over the map in terms of age, being emergent. So we move them from being emergent to more independent readers. So, go ahead, Courtney.
You know me and my quotes. I'm sorry. I love this because I was a huge reader when I was a kid, and it was my place to escape. And so, especially when I am working with our girls and realizing, and I think because my big sister had read, realizing how much reading can help all of our kids. And so this one, reading is the gateway skill that makes all other learning possible, is the literal epitome of truth. Our kids can learn so much through reading. And so I'm sorry, I love that quote. I was like, I'm putting that in there.
Okay, it's a good one. Definitely a good one. So we're going to take a look at the definition of what's emergent versus conventional. And this was a chart that Karen and David put together. It's in their newest book, which is Literacy for All, teaching complex learners how to read and write. Does the student know most of the letters most of the time? If you say yes, that would tip you towards conventional. Do they engage actively during shared reading, or do they act like every time you pick up a book you're doing root canal with no Novocaine? If that were the case, you'd say no, but if they were really engaged in it, then you're over in the daily conventional interventions. Has a means of communication and interaction. We're not saying that they're perfect communicators, but they do have a way of expressing what they want, what they like. They make comments. So they've got some communication cooking there that would put them in daily. And they understand that writing involves letters and words. It doesn't say that they write, but they understand that if you ask them to write something, they would pick a letter, they wouldn't pick a color, that they understand that that's what letters are for. And so there are certainly, all four of these would be a yes, it's easy. There are sometimes kids where there's got 2 yeses and, a couple no's. And then you would go back to the daily emergent kind of interventions to build up those skills before they moved over. But we're going to be looking today at what we do with kids when some of them are emergent, but then how the sequence looks in terms of specifically guided reading. We're not going to take a look at decoding tonight. We're not going to look at writing. We're really just looking at the reading part. And to be perfectly frank and transparent, you can't learn to read if you don't decode. You can't learn to decode if you don't write. You can't write if you don't know how to decode. This is the most integrated experience in terms of learning. That reading depends on decoding. Decoding helps writing and reading. Writing helps you to decode better because you've got to search for those sounds. So none of this happens in a vacuum of reading, but we're just specifically looking at reading tonight. So why literacy? You'll take the next one. We have to trade off because if Courtney's speaker's on, or sound is on, then we all echo. So we don't know why. It's never happened before. It's a means of building communication, language, and vocabulary. And so since our girls and boys are typically nonverbal, your number one goal has to be communication building, right? And so if we're going to put our eggs in any basket, it should be in the literacy basket if we want to further their communication. And there's this huge link from reading to writing. And if you're going to be fully communicative, you have to learn how to write. It brings more of the world to those who really can't access it freely. And, how do they know? There's now like this purple arrow on my screen. Is that, oops, and now it's gone. Okay. We have gremlins in here. Can provide healthy leisure activities. So, meaningful, purposeful communication is the heart of learning to read and write. Students who learn that they can use reading and writing to investigate areas of interest, share their ideas, thoughts, and feelings, or interact with new people understand that the primary purpose of literacy is communication. And so we're looking at that from a communication building aspect of it, not that it just stands alone as I'm able to read.
Okay, so when we're talking about our learners, we're talking about thinking about, and I think Susan talks about this very well when she talked about her grandchildren and being able to watching them play. And I'm watching it with my great nieces right now. They're 2.5 and 4, and they are all about books and watching them flip the books and read the books and, holding the books up to pretend they're reading, all of those things. But how do we give our children that opportunity when they don't have hand use, when they are using devices and things like that? So thinking about shared reading, books on device, playing with the letters, understanding the functions of print, the print conventions, exploring literacy materials, observing print in their natural environments. We need our kids, even though they can't physically do it, they can participate it in different ways that we can allow them those same experiences. And we're going to show you some of those things in our videos.
Yeah, and I'm going to oops. Go ahead, Lizzie. Or was that me? Oh, that was me.
That was you echoing back.
That was echoing back. Okay, so I want to point out one thing, which is understanding the functions of print. There is like so much, tons of research on this. In other words, that, sentences begin with capital letters, that we read from left to right, that if the author makes the words big, you're supposed to make it louder. There's all these things that happen in print that if we spend literally, if we read one book a day, they did all these studies on Head Start kids, on all kinds of littles that are in daycare. And they said, if you read one book a day, and in that one book, you point out two things about the print, like, oh, there's a D. That's why it's at the beginning of duck. Literally that easy, that kind of stuff, that it grew their ability to understand print and help their reading astronomically. It was like the cheapest, easiest intervention out there. So go for it. I think we actually have a webinar on functions of print, if I'm not mistaken. I remember teaching this someplace. So, go ahead. Oh my gosh, she's so cute.
This is my little Ella, and Ella is just 3. And honestly, this was the second time I worked with her, and we had moved to the Rett U Pages TD Snap, and we we're getting her to just interact with not only the device and her new page set, but also getting her to interact with the book and me reading aloud to her. She was used to people reading aloud to her, but she wasn't used to actually making comments and things like that. So you'll see us kind of interacting with her to get her to use to comment about the book. Hello, Bella, said Ben. There's Ben, and he's got his balloon. Something happened. Something happened. You're right. She's gonna tell him something happened. And it was bad. It was bad. And she said, I see you trying to get over to write descriptors. Did you want to say something about the book? You said you are. He is. The book is naughty. That's right. Oh, you want to see? Here you go. Okay, there he is. There's Bella. There's Bella. And there's Ben. There's Ben. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Oh my gosh, she's so cute.
I have so much fun working with her, but she her speech therapist was actually sitting right beside her. So she was kind of looking at her speech therapist. Her mom's the blonde. You can't see her speech therapist, but you can see her kind of looking at those two, kind of going, okay, am I doing this right? Am I? But then her eyes coming right back to me to look at the book. And she is, I've been working with her now for a couple months, and just watching her engage in the books. And now it's funny because she'll get, she'll she's so engaged in the books now, and now that we've started putting books on her device, she's like, turn the page, let's go. I mean, she is so ingrained into the books, and it's so much fun watching her explore them.
So this is a video of June, and it's her first time that she's actually has a book to read, right? And this was the inspiration, was me watching my granddaughter at like 15 months just pretend reading this book for like 20 minutes, just sitting there. And you're going to notice that there are places where I'll say something about a picture, she'll join me by looking at it. Instead of being able to point to the text and pretend read with her fingers, she's pointing to the text. She's been read to a lot. So you're kind of seeing the sequence. We read to them a lot, but then we've got to get books in their hands, so to speak, so that they're able to interact with them. And that's what June's doing here in a priceless way. So hit the go button. Oh, can you hear it? No. Take it out of the play. Take it out of the PowerPoint and see if it'll play. Like, put it in edit and see if it'll play.
Now this one, we have to ring it like a bell. Let me get my.
Can you guys hear it? Okay.
Can you zoom in and just
The bell, right? Just like that bell. Only I don't think the cookies ring. Just that rings. Right. There's a bell. Cookie. I can see it. I like the one that's red. I like the red one with the little dots on it. The one that's at the top, that red one right there. It's my favorite. Oh, you like the one at the bottom? See, Susan, I like that one. That one at the bottom. It is different. It's different than the one at the top. They are different. That one's got sugar on top of it.
She's 2.
It's a great bell. That is so good. So good. So good. Should we turn the page and see some more? Yeah, let's see a different one. We can see a different cookie. Are you ready? What happened here? This is weird.
This was her device being busy.
All right, so we're having an absolutely weird thing happen here. Never seen that before. There we go. Now your Toby's not acting weird. Do you see our words? Right, that's always where we start reading. Look at you going all the way across to see those words.
So those were her eyes making them move.
There you go, you got them all. And that says cookies.
So it's not that I expect her to be reading the words or know what the words are, but there was this joint attention to the book and her being able to lead the reading. It wasn't me necessarily leading it. She was telling me different. She was telling me which one she liked, even though I liked one. She saw the words and she just naturally tracked across the words, which is quite phenomenal. This is a kiddo who got a green calibration her first time she ever saw a device. So she's got to strengthen her eye coordination, that's for sure. But she's been read to. She's used to people putting their finger under the text going across, and all she did was do it with her eyes. So at 2, I'm pretty adamant about getting my kids looking at books that early because they need to play with them. They need to know what a book is, how it operates. So there's our littles.
Okay, when we're talking about shared reading, which is our next step in the reading process, and I did take some of our, of course, most of our information that we take is in our I'm going to rewind my mind first there because it just went really fast. With shared reading, a lot of our information that we do take is taken by Karen Erickson and David Copenhaver's research, as Susan mentioned before. But when we're talking about shared reading, we're talking about an evidence-based instructional area, and its focuses on the interaction. You saw that with Susan and I just working with our girls on the device. We are interacting with the book with them. We can't have it be done in both individually and in small groups. What we're really looking at is that expectation to participate, getting them involved in the books, getting them to participate in what they're seeing in the books, watching where their eyes go. I was lucky enough, one of my very first clients when I first started working with Rett was a young man who lived in another state who had SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. And we were doing the books on the device with him, and watching his eyes go up and look at different points on the picture and seeing what he was looking at and being able to interact with him. So he was very much involved in that shared reading with me. And with shared reading, we can really encourage communication, as you saw with both myself and Susan with the littles, getting them, taking those words and giving them, mapping meaning to it, attributing meaning to everything, all their attention, even if it's, again, we preach this when we're talking about communication, but it also comes with reading. Even if it does not look intentional, we're not going to say that, we're going to presume intention and helping them make connections. One of the things I really start doing, even with my littles, and is start kind of modeling that think aloud. Oh, I see that person standing there. That must be one of our characters. Oh, and talking about what I'm doing as we're reading this story. If you would like more info on shared reading, we do have and I put the link there, but we're also going to have a resources handout that's going to go underneath the web chat when we put it up. But we do have some web chats and free lessons on shared reading in our Rett University free lessons.
Oh, I love this story.
Okay, and I just saw her. She is now like halfway through her second grade or first grade year, and she's like, I'm like, I was like, oh my God, you're so little. Her mom's like, would you please send me that? Because this was when she was just starting out with me.
Right. Now remember we talked last week when we saw each other. Every page said, my pet dinosaur. So I'm gonna wait for you. My pet dinosaur can. Every page says that. My pet dinosaur can. And then we're gonna have our last word. All right, are you ready? Okay, we're going. There's that dinosaur. We already talked about this one with the ball. I'm gonna go here, Miss Dawn. I'm gonna see if you can remember what this pet dinosaur can do. My pet dinosaur can. Oh, he can roar in this one? That's a good guess. That's a good guess. Oh, he roars after he shoots a basketball. I know. I'm looking, I see the neighbor over here staring over the fence. I'm wondering if he's gonna roar at them, like, what are you doing watching me? Read it. My pet dinosaur. I see you working so hard to get your body over there. Good job, Stella Bella. Here's our word. Fetch. Fetch. So I wonder if you've ever been around any doggies that you throw the ball or somebody throws the ball and they go get it and bring it back. So he's got the ball and you look, oh, look what he's done to the ball. He popped a hole in it.
So, and I will tell you, one of my favorite things is, like I said, Stella went into kindergarten reading and writing, and she's now in first grade. And it's so much fun to like meet all of her teachers, and they're all like, she's such a good reader. And I'm like, I know. Like, it's so, but getting them involved in those books, and I really think starting them at such a young age and interacting with that book is so valuable to them because, man, they go, and she loves to read. Like her communication partner in school's like, Courtney, we need to get Epic on her device so that because she wants to read all the time. Like that's her favorite thing to do. So it's really cool to see them growing in their reading from a young age.
Right. Yeah, remember.
And so what you would notice there is that Courtney is saying the words, or the device is saying the words. So the crossover between shared reading and guided, more the guided reading, independent reading, is when the kiddos get to the place where we're not saying the words anymore. They're reading it, they're figuring them out. So how and why to be more complex? I love David Copenhaver. He's my personal mentor. I think they are so good in terms of what they bring to the table in terms of their research. And it says, we do not believe that a different curriculum is required in order for children with disabilities to succeed in learning to read and write. And I totally agree with this. I don't do much that's different. I just provide access. We have learned, however, that teachers must attend consciously and thoughtfully to the significant learning differences of children with disabilities in order to make good instruction accessible to these students. So my kids write, they just write with a different pencil. They read, like Junie at 2 was picking up that book and figuring out how to read it, but she didn't have to pick it up because it was right there for those clever eyes of hers to get to. So when people at IEP meetings start to spit out their special ed curriculum, I get like the heebie-jeebies. I'm like, well, really? It's really boring and it doesn't work. And by the way, you didn't even, validate it on anybody that couldn't talk and can't use their hands. So let's just do what we do and it works. So anyway, I think that leave is next. No, not yet. Okay. Thinking is maximized as we move from emergent to guided. The other thing that's maximized, you can't move from emergent to guided if you really don't have a solid decoding program. We espouse making words at Rett U because it's easily accessible and easily adaptable for kids who are nonverbal and can't use their hands. They don't have to do, p, at, and then sweep it up their arm, and they don't have to make sounds out loud to prove that they know the sounds. There's lots of different ways of doing it. We want them actively participating in the process. And we want to make sure that actual reading of text is not neglected for just listening to books only. I cannot tell you the number of times, and you guys can all vouch for me on this, where they say, oh yeah, she's reading. And I said, oh goodness gracious, what's she reading? And they tell me, and I say, she's reading that herself? No, we read to her. And that's not reading, that's listening. I mean, the number of times that comes across my desk in an IEP goal even, so that you're mixing up the two. So we want to provide experiences in a wide variety of texts. They need to read fiction. They need to read nonfiction. Some kids will definitely have a preference for one or the other. But we try to keep it pretty balanced. Today, I just explained to somebody what realistic fiction was, the difference between taking a look at author's purpose when you've got a realistic fiction book, that it's fun to read, but at the same time, you're learning something from it. So those are just all strategies that we would teach if we were teaching gen ed kids. And they love it because they're smart. These kids are smart. They're impacted with their output. They're not impacted by input. So we want to build those strategies for reading and comprehension, and it gives them a lot of confidence. When they can read and they can write, they have a whole lot more confidence. Okay, so now you're going to get to listen to a little French today. This is my friend Lieve, who's from Switzerland, and one of her carers, Alana, who I adore. And she's actually reading a benchmark book to benchmark out of this level and into the next. She did both the books and passed, and so we're on to the next level. Not that she has to, if she was doing not as well in the books, I wouldn't have even benchmarked her, but everything was a little too easy. She was getting hundreds on all the quizzes. She was writing very easily. And it's like, it's just time, let's just do this. So you're probably going to have to do the same thing on this one, is take it out of the PowerPoint would be my guess. I don't know why, because it's just today. Yep, there it's not. So take it out of the PowerPoint. That's so weird. We do this every single month and it works. So welcome to the time it didn't.
I think you have to unmute yourself, Courtney.
I like turtles too. I know. Yes. So right. It is bad. That poor turtle. But the vet.
So can you just pause it for a minute? Okay, someone explain that as much as I can understand French now, and I can model on her device almost equally as well as I can in English, and there are certain words that I can say in French. My second language is more Spanish than French. When I say things in French, Lieve just laughs at me so badly that we've decided that I'll just narrate in English. She's hearing it in French. Alana speaks to her in French. She writes in French. And I'm putting it into word prediction on her device that's in French. But you're not going to hear me say much in French because it destroys the session. She's laughing so hard she can't continue. So even though I can say certain things really well, but she doesn't think so.
Like the help. Me too. I like the help. That's the one. No. Sorry. That one's sure. I'm good. Oh no. Very. Very, very sick. Very sick. I know. Look, it's so sad. Yes. Very sad, Leaf. I agree. Very sad. Oh no. When we adopted our dog, she had a broken leg. This is her paw. She came with a broken leg. It was so sad. It was bad. Yeah, who did that to her? I like my dog. I do. But this dog is hurt. Let's see. Let's see. And look at this dog. Yes, right. Oh no. And this dog up here is like watching everything going, oh no, oh no. But the vet. But you're going to have the thing. Wow, Lee, look at you. Zoom, zoom.
So she is a very, oh, you're going to have to turn off. There we go. So she's a very fluent reader. So unless she's exhausted, that's how she reads. She reads straight across. She can wrap text. She can find words. If she doesn't know a word, I'll ask her, and she had perfect knowledge of what this was. So I'm going to show you how she answered questions about the book in the next video. And I'm betting if you turn your speaker on while it's in there, it'll work. But maybe not.
Quel est de quoi parle le livre le plus? Est-ce qu'il parle
des gens qui vont visiter le docteur. Okay, so you have to read all three of the answers. Ah, pardon. No, that's okay. Est-ce que ça parle des animaux qui vont visiter le vétérinaire? Ou est-ce que ça parle des animaux dans un magasin d'animaux? Easy? Easy? Okay. All right. So read the question and the first answer. Alors, de quoi parle-t-il le livre le plus? Est-ce que ça parle des gens qui vont visiter le docteur? Oui or non? Non. Ok. Est-ce que ça parle des animaux qui vont visiter le vétérinaire? Oui. Ou est-ce que ça parle des animaux qui vont visiter le magasin d'animaux? Oui or no? No.
So Leave is also a really good writer, and she loves to write. If I could have convinced her school to do any of this, I would have been overjoyed, but they just would not. And so it's in our times together, in our intensives, and actually Leave is responsible for why we know how to do remotes at all. Because she was supposed to come to me for an intensive, but had to have surgery, and the doctor wouldn't let her fly. And so the mom said, of course you can do this remotely. And I said, oh, sure. And then had to figure it out. So I was like really happy I got to know her. But here's the thing that I think is really interesting. I don't speak French. I don't even agree with how they necessarily teach reading in French. And they live in Switzerland. They're not in France. They're very, it's kind of like when I went to school. It's very rote. It's very formal. It's very strict. There's not a lot of fun to it. There's no developmental aspect to it. But she's so smart, and she's bilingual. She understands my English. I only test her in French just to make sure, because that's only fair, right? Her mom speaks 4 languages, and so she's getting exposed to all of this, and she's figuring out what those sounds, those letters say, and how they go together by what we've read to her and what she's got in her device. That language is what's helping her to put it all together, because decoding there is not exactly how they teach reading. It's all rote memory. So anyway, she's amazing. All right, so this is the kind of the final stage, right? So actually Leave will, it was a book that we were doing that was a level E. When she goes to F, she now reads the books both on the Toby, on her device. Well, actually she has a grid pad. So both on the grid pad and both on an iPad. This is Ashley, who's going to read this book on the iPad. And we're using something called Voice Stream. The cursor follows the text. They just follow the cursor. We can't tell that their eyes are actively following it, only by asking them questions or highlighting things. Like I'll highlight 3 lines and say, which line tells you what the character's thinking? And they have to say it's the yellow line or the green line or the pink line. And I'll ask them, I'll highlight 3 different words and say, which word here means the same as terrible, and there's 3 different words, and they have to tell me with partner assisted scan. Lots of ways I can check to make sure that they are reading what they're reading. But I don't like moving kids here unless their tracking looks like Leaves did on the device. If they're having trouble wrapping text, if they're having trouble getting all the way across the text and stopping at midline, which is absolutely developmentally appropriate and really speaks to the eye apraxia as well as the body apraxia, all right? Our kids have trouble across the midline every which way, including visually. So unless they're really fluid, I'm going to hold them back because once you get to a certain level, you can't put it on the darn device. It's just too much to put there. You're just going to just be filling up the device with, first of all, those books are not easy to make. And now you're making tons and tons of text that is hard to fit into certain buttons and have it highlight. It's not as hard on the grid pad in Grid, but it's hard on Communicator. But Communicator does more, so I like it more. But anyway, so this is what it looks like when she's reading the book on the butterfly life cycle. Now, I will tell you, here's the advantage. I have some kids who have CVI. They get a black background and yellow text. They get if you notice, the words are not one space apart, they're 2 spaces apart. The lines are not 1 space apart, they're 2 spaces apart. I try as much as I can to see if I can. I have a high schooler. She's just graduating high school, reading at about a sophomore level. And I've tried to make the words closer and the lines closer. And she says, I can't do it. I can't do it. You're making it too hard now. I can't read it. So this is the flexibility we get in VoiceStream, and then you can show them what she's doing there. We put it on silent. It's on silent.
We read about the egg, and now here's our picture, which I think is kind of cool. Remember when we were doing our picture walk? This was the egg. This white thing was a whole egg, but look at what happened to it. Look what the caterpillar or the larva is doing to that egg. We've got the idea now of what's going on here, and we get to read it.
Can you pause a
Okay,
second?
ready, darling? But we're only going to do one sentence at a time, so no freaking out aloud here. We read about the...
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so the reason I'm going over the picture for her is that she does have a slight, she's not CVI, but she definitely has a slight visual processing issue. And she doesn't tend to look all the way across the page. So I'm making sure that the image makes sense to her, because we're still using images in books to help with the understanding of the language. Okay.
We read about...
There we go.
Freaking out aloud here. No freaking out aloud, because we're just doing the yellow. All right, and here we go. So judging from that behavior, I'm going to have Miss Carrie hold your head so it's facing the words, because you were not looking at all. All right, so now I'm going to have it play again. Are you ready? Okay, so now we're going to stop. I am going to ask you, I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to bring me out here so that you can see me. All right, so do you need help with any of those words? No. Bravo. I am so excited. That is so cool. You are getting to be such a smart reader. Do you know that? Yes. And here you're looking at all of this text, and instead of saying to yourself, oh my gosh, there's all this text, you said, I have read lots of text before. I have done hard reading before. I am very good at sounding out words. Whoa, what a great thing to say to yourself. So I'm going to leave this up here. Okay, Now, this may seem a bit brutal, but this is what they do. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I think that you know every single one of these words, so it should be really easy. So I'm going to hide me, and here we go. Ready? Whoops. Let's come back because you right away moved your head. Miss Carrie's going to help you with your head. Here we go.
There we go.
Okay, so now I'm going to hide that. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can talk. All right. Do you need help with any of those words? No. No.
So,
Whoops.
there we go. Thanks. So this is probably one of the earlier times where she was shifting from only on the Toby to reading on the on VoiceStream on the iPad. And you can see the tracking, and she's a kid that does need, we call it a steady for her head, because she's got a lot of random movements with her head, which are easier when you're on the Toby and you're tracking print because you can come back and find it. But this thing is going, so you need to have a little bit more study. But she's now not only able to read the text, she's able to read the questions and answer them. That's how far she's gotten now. So it's just, yeah. And this is my girl who just watched movies a lot and screamed at me for the first year. So, woo! Such a lot of progress.
But I will say she's got a really good rolling her eyes when she's telling you yes and no.
And it hasn't gotten any better. No. So this is what I added at the end. We really do have this developmental process in terms of where we go. It's not a random idea here. It's like we read to them. We want them playing with books early on. It's like I love when I get kids at 18 months. Let's get them on a device. Let's get them playing with books. If they learn to track the print, it becomes automatic so that they don't have to think about that part. All they have to think about is the comprehension of the language. What people don't understand oftentimes about Rett is as much as you, in the end, integrate everything in the beginning is compartmentalized. Learning to track print is a skill we kind of just take for granted because we move our finger over it and our eyes follow, right? Nothing works that automatically for our kids with Rett. And so learning to track that print is a huge component, and then they can focus on understanding it and finding words. They can then talk about the book while they're tracking it. We're not forgetting about decoding and writing. We're just focusing on one aspect here. But once they track well, boy, that iPad works really well for them, and they can then read so much more. And you put them in something like a somebody just mentioned it. What are the books? Like the books online. The one you mentioned, Courtney. Epic. So you put a kid in Epic books, and now they can follow the track of that independently. You can have the sound on if you want. You can have the sound off, but they've got that tracking down that really supports them.
So something I want to say, because I think one of the things I hear, especially from some of the younger, is I'm seeing it with some of my friends' kids who are little toddlers, and they're like, they don't like me reading to them. They don't want to sit still. They don't. Now, a lot of our kids, I do have some girls who are whirling dervishes who are constantly going. And I'm like, even if you just read 1 or 2 pages to them on the go, but pointing to the words and starting to do that stuff early is going to help them get that developmental process started and slowly building up. Ella's a different kid, but I will tell you, I have another little girl who I've been working with since she was 3, who is now 5.5 and in kindergarten. And when I first started with her, we literally could go for 5 minutes, and then we had to do like a break or a movement break or something like that. Now she will go for the whole hour of work, and she's reading and she's writing and she is reading by herself. But we had to start slowly. So even if they're whirling dervishes and they're all over the place or they're screaming at you, just try a little bit and then take a break and keep trying and keep going back and keep increasing it, because it will. I and she was a movie girl. She loved her movies. She wanted those movies. But that was our reward for doing one page. And then we slowly, like, we flipped the scales, and that was the way to kind of get them going. So there is a way to start them at that young age.
And this,
And this,
yes.
We're going to, I know that's a lot on one page. I am going to actually create this into a a document that's going to go with the web chat. But these are all of our resources. The ones in the purple are actually our free resources that are available. If you go on our web chat, our website, underneath coaching, it says free lessons, and there are web chats in there, all of our previous web chats, our lessons that we did during COVID and things like that, and we're constantly updating and adding to those. So those are some free resources that would be really helpful. And then, of course, we do have some courses that are available underneath our Rett U courses online that you have access to them for 1 year that are priced up there. But we will put this into a document that will go with the web chat when we put. Sorry.
Okay, it's okay. This is my favorite. Oh my gosh. It's called reading. It's how people install new software into their brains. Oh my gosh.
I saw that and I just couldn't resist. I was like, that is the cutest thing. And I think especially, again, I'm going back to my childhood and how much reading was so important to me. And it continues to be to this day. Like, it is my place to escape. It is my place to, go to someplace different. And I think for our girls, I'm reading a book right now with one of my more mature ladies, and watching her be able to kind of go someplace else in her brain while we're reading together is absolutely amazing. And that's, I want to make sure that our girls have that opportunity, especially as they get older, and this, there's not as many things for them to do. And so there's, being able to read is a really great independent skill for them.
So final thoughts. Reading is important because if you can read, you can learn anything about everything and everything about anything. Great. I love your quotes. You're like the best quote finder ever. So we are very happy to be here. I think we're on our last slide now. And there we are. If you want to get a hold of any of us and any ideas that you have or subjects we haven't covered, just let us know. All right. And this will be up. How long does it take to get this up on YouTube?
It really just depends on how busy I am and how many hours in the day. Hopefully it should be up within the next couple days. I will not promise, because we have a couple things that are kind of working on and that are taking priority over things on top of full days of clients. But I will try to get them up, get it up as soon as possible. Hopefully no later than the beginning of next week.
Oh, that's pretty great.
I
don't think you have to explain yourself about that.
As Susan and I were saying, we keep looking for like 8 to 12 more hours in a day lately. So
8 where I don't have to sleep. Yeah, that'd be good. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for coming.